Hello, dear class. Here we are again, all the way to the Renaissance. We've come a long way, all the way since the before civilization even starts. So why does the Renaissance occur? What is it all about? Some historians in the past have tried to periodize the Renaissance, and when I first started studying it, people would say, well, it started sometime around 1500, then a few years later, maybe it starts around 1400, then it was 1350. So historians are always quibbling about where does it actually start. One of my former colleagues used to say that it started September the 9th, approximately 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Well, of course, that was done with a little bit of a joke. But why does the Renaissance come about? Why does this so-called this rebirth occur? And why does it occur when it does, however it's dated? A couple of things happen, roughly beginning around 1000, but certainly by 1300 or so, or 1350, a number of dramatic things were happening in Europe. For one thing, the rise of the state, which really makes things quite a bit more stable than they had been. All of a sudden, with the state, you don't get a constitution, but you get order, you get stability, you get a pretty good idea of who's going to be governing or ruling. In addition to the state, you begin to get the rise of the universities, Oxford, and all the way over there in the Sorbonne in Paris. And that means learning, and that means more studying. And it's not just theology anymore, it's the professions, it's medicine, it's law. And so you begin to get a kind of more of an intellectual class, more literacy, more sort of a marketplace of ideas, if you will. And the rise of the university is important because it means that the church will not have a monopoly of learning. So that's going to be very important because you're going to get a lot of what had been conventional or received ideas. They'll be challenged. A marketplace of ideas, a whole new idea in and of itself. In addition, you begin to get the growth of the economy, the revival of trade, and with the revival of trade, of course, that's made possible because of many technological revolutions. I won't get into all of those now. That's in an earlier chapter, and you should know all those by now. But the use of horses, even the horseshoe, for example, a number of different technologies, the heavy plow. All of this makes the development of agriculture more possible. And with this, many people released from agriculture get to the cities, and that means, along with the revival of trade, it means the revival of cities, urban culture. And of course, urban culture is associated with the rise of the university. All of these are objective changes. And they will all make possible what is going to be the Renaissance. So, with that foundation, what is the Renaissance? Well, literally means rebirth. My old professor used to say, he was Italian, he used to say, it's not really a rebirth, this is not going back to Rome, but it is the rediscovery of a lot of ancient authors nevertheless. Machiavelli, for example, bases the Prince on the works of Titus Flavius, for example. Or I should say Joseph Luis, and this means that the old sources, which have kind of been forgotten because you have centuries of Christian learning, are going to be suddenly challenged, or at least the old sources are going to be renewed, and they will challenge the Christian learning. So you begin to get, again, this marketplace of ideas. So what is the Renaissance then? How would we characterize it? Well, the Renaissance has vastly different attitudes, however you might want to periodize this, but the Renaissance has vastly different attitudes regarding nature, regarding the state, of course regarding religion itself, but nature, the state, art, human nature, all of these are vastly different. And Renaissance writers, Renaissance thinkers, people like Machiavelli, Leonardo, Da Vinci, and Michelangelo, the sculptor, the way that they create is already an indication that we have a rather dramatic departure. Yes, I grant you it doesn't occur in 1350 or 1351, but over 150 years it does occur, and you begin to get a number of thinkers who challenge the old way of thinking, who challenge religion, who challenge the Catholic Church. They challenge its ideas. So let me just take a look at this. Let me try to summarize this up, first of all, the way my professor, Roberto Giammanco, might have done. He would say, that now you have nature replacing grace. So what does that mean? Well, Christian world that is beginning to recede. It's not going to disappear. People are going to be very, very much Christian in 1600 and 1700. But this world, which was dominated by religion and by the church, this world which kind of looks forward to the next world beyond this one is going to be challenged by a world now which is going to really value and revalue this world, this secular world, this world in which we live, with far less attention given to the world that is to come, because this world we're sure of, this world we're in. So nature replaces grace. Well, grace means that man is fallen, and original sin, as a result of original sin, man is fallen. He inherits this original sin, and therefore he needs grace or redemption in order to overcome that. The new view is that this is not the case at all. Man is not a fallen creature. As a matter of fact, he's going, forgive me for saying he all the time, because that might sound a little bit sexist, but in any case, I'll try to change genders. But the point is that nature now means that man is neither good nor evil. He does not inherit original sin at all. He simply is what he is. And he is not even necessarily God's creature, he simply is. So nature replaces grace. Man does not need to be redeemed at all. Ethics, in a lot of ways, replaces theology. And what does that mean? Well, theology had argued that there was a fixed nature, and that man inherits this fixed nature and he never overcomes it. The whole idea is that God doesn't create a nature which needs to be changed or improved because he creates perfection. So the idea was that the world was created all at once, more or less, or 6 days, if you will, and beings who exist, they have a fixed essence. The notion of ethics really challenged that, because it means that man can improve himself through learning. Thomas More's Utopia is all about that. It's if we have better institutions, if we educate people, then they will have a better nature. So we can improve things through our own efforts, and we do not have to simply receive what is given. And another, a third principle would be that action replaces contemplation. There's no point in trying to change a world which is perfect, but if you don't think it's perfect, then you understand that you can change it. It depends on your will. Action replaces contemplation. It's a very different attitude about what can happen, given that man now will redeem, will sort of not redeem, but man will really value his own efforts to transform everything around him, as well as himself. Let me take a look at Machiavelli. You'll be very concerned with Machiavelli, because you have an assignment on him. The Prince is a book that's talked about forever. Nobody ever talks about some of his other work, which is quite different. But let me concentrate on the Prince, because here's a very different attitude toward the state. The medieval and the Christian idea of the state is that the Prince basically takes care of everything. The Prince should be the good shepherd. The Prince should convey people from this world to the next. The Prince is responsible to the church and to God, and must be a good prince. Machiavelli will have none of that. Machiavelli says the Prince is somebody who is interested in attaining power. The Prince does that. If a good prince is not necessarily a Christian prince. A good prince is an effective prince, and to be effective you have to use your genius, your intelligence, your will, and of course everything comes into play. Human greed, human intelligence, human self-interest. That's what politics is all about. It's not about Christianity. It's not about good and evil. The state is neither good nor evil, and therefore the state is something which is manipulated for self-interest quite often. Machiavelli, by the way, doesn't think that should be the way it is. He's simply saying that is how it is, and one has to more or less discount the Christian attitude, which is naive and to a large extent irrelevant. Machiavelli talks about, for example, illustrations of this. Cesare Borgia. Cesare Borgia has the three principles that Machiavelli really talks about in statecraft. And by the way, this is the introduction of the political. This is the beginning of what we mean by politics. This is the introduction of the political into the modern world. Machiavelli, three different principles, three different words. Necessità, fortuna, virtù. Necessità, what does that mean? Necessità means that the effective prince understands history. The effective prince understands causality. The effective prince knows how to act so to bring about what is in his own best interest, right? And that in order to really be able to do that, he also has to be in the position to do that. That's Fortuna. Cesare Borgia, as a matter of fact, not only had this incredible understanding that Machiavelli talks about, but he also has Fortuna. Why is that? He is the son of Pope Alexander VI. Shock you a little bit, the son of the Pope? Yes, this is the Renaissance we're talking about. We're not talking about the good popes maybe earlier on. And so Alexander, of course, Alexander Borgia, was in fact a person who had children, he had mistresses, and as a matter of fact, Italians would have told you then, and they'll tell you now, the church is just another political institution. Let's see it for what it really is. It's run by human people, human beings who are themselves very fallible. So, so that's those are the two of the principles. And the third one is virtù, which sounds like virtue. Machiavelli would have none of that, nothing like virtue. Virtù means the ability to impose your will on the political order, on politics, on the state. Virtù, in other words, it can only follow if you really have an understanding of historical causality, of history, of cause and effect, if you're in a position to actually act upon something, and if you have the personality, the character, the strength, the motivation to actually make all that come about. That's what the state really is. If you look at nature, just one other thing I'd like to mention. The Christian view was that nature contains within itself the intention of God, right? Nature it already includes the moral order. In other words, God's intentions are written into nature. The Renaissance does not look at that at all. The Renaissance looks upon nature as neither good nor evil. It does not have any moral order inside of it at all. It simply is. And it is there for mankind to use it, to manipulate it, to transform it, to change it as he wishes or as he can do. So even there you have a rather dramatic change, rather dramatic difference. Art also, a very similar principle. Art is much more naturalistic. If you look at medieval art, you'll notice that it's very, very detailed, but it's not naturalistic. There's no perspective, for example, as there is in Leonardo, if you look at almost any of the works of Leonardo. You'll see that in everything. And you generally see that in Renaissance art as well, a lot of the reason being the impact of Leonardo. One other thing, take a look at Michelangelo, take a look at David, for example, which was sculpted in 1504. David was not complete. A lot of Michelangelo's works are not complete. Why is that? It's deliberate. Because Michelangelo, like so many Renaissance artists, believed that everything wasn't finished once and for all, including man himself, right? He's in a constant process of development, and therefore Michelangelo deliberately does not complete anything because there is no such thing as perfection. Perfection is something to be attained, to be developed. Mankind was not a finished product. There is no fixed essence, once again, created by God. I'll leave you with that. There's a lot more to be said about the Renaissance, but I hope you'll look at the text. And don't forget to look at this. Thank you.